Welcome back, Agent. Let's discuss how to work with CSV files. Since the orange mission left you with a CSV file and some instructions, we can actually learn how to use Python's built-in CSV module in order to work with that file. CSV stands for comma-separated variables. This basically implies that the information in the file has columns and rows in this sort of format, where you have columns and each column is separated by a comma, and then you have rows following that same format. However, keep in mind that many delimiters or separators can be used, such as semicolons, tabs, or even pipe operator symbols, and that basically just indicates that you don't need to have strictly commas. Sometimes people use these other types of separators, and another word for that is a delimiter. CSV files are commonly associated with Excel, but Python has a built-in library that can work with them as well. Let's explore this further. The first thing we're going to do is check our notebook location. We want to make sure that we're in the same location as our yellow mission file or folder. So make sure that when you run pwd in a cell, it reports back that you're in this yellow mission working with CSV files. That way you can open the example.csv file in the same way we are. If you're located somewhere else on your computer, just make sure you pass in the entire file path to your example.csv file. Okay, let's discuss reading in CSV files. In order to do that, we need to import CSV, and then we open the actual CSV file. We'll say open example.csv, and then you should be able to see that this data is text.io wrapper, and then name example CSV, mode R. Now the next steps would be to use the csv.reader function on this data, and then try to create a list out of that data. However, sometimes that may induce an error because maybe you have some different types of symbols that Python gets confused by. For instance, the @ symbol in an email address like @gmail.com may confuse Python, and I'll show you an example of what I mean by that. So let's say you opened up your CSV file and you're going to say CSV data is equal to csv.reader data. And then you're going to try to make a list out of this data, CSV data. You'll get a Unicode decode error. And this is a very common error to get when trying to open either text files or CSV files. And it often looks something like this. Codec can't decode byte. And it gives you some sort of weird code here, and then in position, and then some sort of position. Basically what that means is there's some character where Python doesn't know how to interpret it without indicating the encoding. And this could be anything as simple as an @ symbol, like in an email, or it could be more complex, like maybe you're trying to import some sort of Russian text file or some other language where the alphabet is different. Maybe it's in Chinese or Japanese. In that case, you may need to provide an encoding parameter. For most cases of English text, you can encode with UTF-8. So let's show you how to do that. We're going to say data is equal to open, and we're going to, again, open that same example.csv file, but this time we'll add in the encoding parameter and say UTF-8. So if you ever get this error, go ahead and try encoding UTF-8. If this still fails, then you're probably going to want to do a little bit of searching on Stack Overflow and give a little more detail about what your actual file looks like, because it may have Russian characters, Japanese characters, Chinese characters, and sometimes this encoding won't work for that. Then we're going to say CSV data is equal to CSV reader data, and then all of this in the same cell, we will say data lines is equal to list of CSV data. And then with the encoding, we were able to successfully read in that data. So let's take a look at what data lines looks like. And you'll notice here it's quite large, so you'll get a lot of output in this. So let's just look at the first couple of lines by using slice notation. And we see here that we have a list of lists. And typically in a CSV file, the first line of the CSV file is known as a header. And that basically just contains the information about what each column represents. For example, we can see we have an ID column, a first name, a last name, an email, gender, IP address, and city. And keep in mind, all this information is fake. So let's print this out in a format that looks a little more in line with what the CSV file format looks like. We can say for line in data lines, and we'll just do the first few lines, so we'll use slice notation there. Print out line. So if I take a look at this, and I can zoom out here just a little bit so we can see the actual structure, I see now that data lines is essentially a list of lists where each list indicates, after the first one, which is the header, the actual rows. So essentially, it's a list of all the rows. So I could say, more appropriately, for row in data lines, print row. And this is your CSV file now stored in Python's memory. So let's imagine that I only wanted to grab all the emails. And again, these are all fake emails. What I could do is, if we zoom back in here, I could say all emails is an empty list, and then for line in data lines, and let's just do 1 through 15 here. The reason for that is because I'm going to skip the header, so I'm skipping 0, so I'll start at 1 and then go slice to 15 and say all emails, append, line, and then I can say 3. So again, let's make this a little clearer by calling this row and then saying row here. So all I'm saying is go through this list of lists and grab the elements at index 3, which is the email. If we go 0, 1, 2, 3, we can see we have the emails there. And that's easier to see here on the header. 0, 1, 2, 3 is the email. So if I run this, and then I see all emails, boom, I have all the emails for the first couple of rows there. And I can do the same thing with full names. So if I wanted full names, something I could do is say for row in data lines 1 through 15. Well, I have the first name and last name separated. So let's do the following. Let's say first is equal to row at index position 1, and last is equal to row at index position 2, and then their full name is equal to, well, let's just say name is equal to first space concatenated together with last, and then we'll say full names append name. We run that, and then let's check full names, and we get back a list of full names. So hopefully you get the idea here of how to work with CSV files in Python. The main idea is that eventually you'll get it in a structure as a list of all the rows, and then you can just do whatever you want with all the control flow you already understand. The CSV module also allows you to quickly either create a new file or append to an existing file. Let's quickly go over how to do that. The first thing you can do is say file to output, so basically our new file is equal to open, and we're going to make up some CSV names. So go ahead and just make up some new name, whatever you want, and then we will say with the W, and then we'll also indicate that new line is equal to an empty string. So notice there's no space there, and that's going to allow us to overwrite the default, which is the new line is like this. So that makes more sense for a CSV file, that we just have a blank new line so we don't get confused, because it's not really like a normal text file, because we want rows all together, no new lines. So we're going to create that file to output, and then say CSV underscore writer is equal to CSV.writer instead of .reader. Pass in the file to output variable, and then this is where we denote our delimiter. So the delimiter, it can technically be whatever you want, but you should try to stick to commas because those are the most common. And once your CSV writer is ready to go, you can call the write row method off of it. Meaning, off of CSV writer, call write row. And this is where you just pass in an example list of what you want the row to look like. Maybe, well, the first one, let's make it the column. So col 1, column 2, then column 3. And there you go, just wrote that all, so just wrote a fresh row. If you want to do multiples at once, you can use write rows, plural, and then this just allows you to pass in a list of lists. So maybe we want 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. So if you run that, you just wrote column 1, column 2, column 3, then 1, 2, 3 for the next row, and then 4, 5, 6 for the row after that. Once you're done writing, you can just take the file to output that you created, that variable, and close it off. So keep in mind, that creates a brand new file, and if you already had a CSV file of this name, it would have completely overwritten it. If you wanted to just append to an existing CSV file, then you use the A read mode. So let's show you how to do that. We already have this file right here that has the header, column 1, column 2, column 3, and then 2 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's add in another row that says 7, 8, 9 to this. So we open up our existing file, which is called makeup new CSV, and I'm going to open it with the A mode that is append, so I'm appending new lines to this CSV file. And I will also say new lines have an empty string. Then once I've done that, I can redefine my CSV writer as writer on this file. So csv.writer on that F file, whatever you happen to call it. Last time we happened to call it file to output, but now we're just calling it F. And then say CSV writer, write a row. And here you can just pretty much put whatever you want. We'll say 7, 8, 9. And there we just appended something new to write row. And if you're done with it, then you can close it. Okay, that's really it for the basics, and that's because CSVs themselves are pretty basics. There's really only 2 dimensions to think of, the columns or the rows. And by getting a list of lists, you already know how to deal with that. All right, let's have a very quick review of CSV module. So you just open up your CSV file, and if necessary, if you get a Unicode decode error, you open it up with an encoding, try UTF-8. Then by calling the CSV file or the CSV module, call .reader on that data, and then pass it to a list, and now you have a list of all the rows. And you can do whatever you want with that using for loops or whatever methods you prefer. If you want to create a new file, go ahead and just make up some new name for a CSV file with W, set new line to an empty string, create the writer object, make sure you denote what your delimiter is going to be, and then you can write either a single row or write plural rows, and then you can close the file. If you want to add new information to a CSV file, it's very much the same thing, except you have the mode is equal to A instead of equal to W.